So I've just woken up, so my voice is a bit, might sound a bit, um, like after waking up. But I felt to make a recording to speak about the function of introverted feeling. And now, since I started to, since I came across Jung's model of the psyche and the 8 cognitive functions, something felt to me that I finally found a method, something, a system to explain in through my view and in a way that felt accurate to me, uh, the human much of a significant and accurate part of the human personality and how the human mind thinks. So after I found Jung's model of the psyche and the 8 cognitive functions specifically, I started to feel extremely drawn into it. And there were like days upon months, ultimately becoming years of just continuing to delve deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the subject, watching YouTube videos, reading forums, and reading things. So I wouldn't say I went so deeper that I imagine a TI individual would go like reading, like I've bought Carl Jung's psychological types book, but I'm just at the beginning of reading it, even after I have it for maybe 1 year. So I haven't went as a TI user to read everything, but I went into touching everything, into feeling everything, into getting like I absorbed. I feel I went into so much of the field, and I absorbed the information rather than reading things. So it is mainly about this act of absorbing, of observing and absorbing information, which I feel it might have something to do with FI in a specific degree, in a certain degree, that I wanted to record this video about. But now the fan of the laptops are really, and I need to find a way before I continue, because I need to find a way to see if I can record the sound properly. Okay, continuing. Um, so related to FI, I was sitting in bed before doing this recording and I was thinking about FI and how I would explain FI from my experience. Because, for example, I find my psyche to be using an INFP template, and the INFP template uses the cognitive functions of introverted feeling as the first cognitive function, and then as the secondary or auxiliary cognitive function, it uses extroverted intuition, and then as the tertiary cognitive function, it uses introverted sensing, and then as the fourth cognitive function or the weakest cognitive function, it uses extroverted thinking. And these four cognitive functions lie in the conscious side of the psyche of the INFP cognitive template and the INFP psyche. And there are the other four functions complementary to these ones, which are extroverted feeling, introverted intuition, extroverted sensing, and introverted thinking. They are operating in the subconscious or unconscious of the INFP psyche. So, as I identified my psyche as an INFP psyche, which we could call an INFP personality type, uh, I feel in general people who truly are able to identify in their own psyche a certain cognitive function, and people who have at the same time an inclination for a higher level of self-awareness, and they are able to study and look into that specific cognitive function to try to underpin its workings, would be, in my opinion, one of the most um, recommended, in a way, to speak about those cognitive functions. Um, and I feel sure that this is how it was done by the most systems, even Jung, even socionics or other systems. They have listened to the people that were using those cognitive functions, and that's where they took their information from. But I feel that there is a constant refinement of, and there should be a constant refinement of these cognitive functions, because I feel there is a constant deeper and deeper and clearer understanding of how a specific cognitive function works. So what Jung, for example, discovered in the past might have laid the basis, but then much like many other people came and added to that and added to it and clarifying it more and more. For example, Jung has defined the 8 cognitive functions, but then through the experience of other people who after Jung's work, have come and improved on those descriptions, we might get to a level of understanding how these cognitive functions are truly working. So, um, in this light, I feel that I feel I have a level of depth with introverted feeling, and I feel that after I've discovered this Jung's model of the psyche and discovering the cognitive functions, it's like I couldn't believe that I can finally start to understand or have some words for how my mind works. So after I understood introverted feeling, it became like, oh my God, finally there are some clear words to describe how my mind is working, how my psyche is working. So it felt extremely accurate in the bits and pieces that I found about introverted feeling. Uh, some of them, I mean, and some of them, especially the ones that I've heard on some YouTube videos and some ways in which introverted feeling is described, which feels much more, let's say, it could be true, but it's true from a very, very, let's say, shallow or superficial level. And those ones didn't feel like quite accurate to really pinpoint what FI is about. So this is why I felt to perhaps make this current recording to see how much I could be able to describe it in this moment, because I'm using NE to speak. So I'm using extroverted intuition to speak. Extroverted intuition speaks in the moment. I haven't thought about this before. Whatever I'm going to say now, it's only happening right now. So much of this information, I haven't been looking at it before. Whatever it comes is current. It's like in the moment processing. I'm processing it as I speak. But I had a vision. I had a vision and the image of what I want to speak, let's say, about when I was in bed prior to making the. But it's like an inner image which has no content yet. It's not mentally a thing. It doesn't have words to it. It's just the image. In a way, we could call it an image. Although it's more than an image. It's an image knowing or something, a sensation of a content. It's it's a sensation first, an inner sensation of a content and even a concept, but it's not necessarily, it doesn't have all the words to it, all the components to it yet. It has to be, I have to use NE to try to map it out. So with this introduction, after this introduction, okay, introverted feeling. So I was sitting in bed priorly, and See, this is a sigh. A sigh needs to recall the specific moment when a thing happened because it contains the information of a specific knowing. A sigh and a fi work together. I couldn't, like, I could try to jump directly to the knowing, but it would be a bit frustrating for my body in a way. Like my body has to leave the information right now together with a fi. It's not, I can't detach so much from my body. I have to be here. My body has to be here in the process as well. So in order to bring my body here, I need to remember the past moment in which my body was there in the bed and that thing happened. So now both me and my body and everything is recollecting that moment and being in that sensation as it arises, and now I can speak from it. So I was sitting in bed before doing the recording, and I was trying to give my one way in which I could define a FI, how a FI works. So I was thinking, like, when we think about a FI, we need to think, and I think when we think about all 8 cognitive functions, we need to think of them in terms of languages. It's like having 8 different languages. Now, each language is specialized in its own, let's say, nature. And each language gives that user that uses that specific cognitive function in their dominant as their dominant cognitive function. It gives that specific individual is like that's their dominant language. That's more than how they speak, and it's how they understand reality. It's what they use to understand the entire reality around them, and they understand it through this main tool or language. And in the FI, what's the FI language and what's the FI tool, and how could we explain in depth what FI does, is by using the following analogy. I come up with what feels to be closer to reality of what FI does, is to imagine a sonar. You know how you have this underwater submarine or whatever, and they have these devices called sonars. And the sonar is a device that sends a wave of an electromagnetic wave, let's call it a radio wave, let's call it, throughout the ocean. And it sends that wave, and whenever it encounters objects, it emulates and measures those objects using, simply saying now, the process is a bit more complex than this, but I'm just simply describing in simple words. So that wave, when it propagates from that sonar forward, it encounters objects, and it's like it encounters an object and it emulates it, and it can find out the height, the depth, the texture, the composition, the material of those objects, let's say. If it's let's imagine there is this advanced sonar. So the sonar sends this wave in the outer reality, and then with that wave, it understands the objects that exist in the outer reality. So how this feels for a FI? For a FI, it feels like there is a thing here which we could call the soul. And from the soul, there is a constant radiation being emitted outwards, and that constant radiation also always comes inwards permanently. It's like that sonar wave that comes, touches an object, then comes back and is reflected back. And this is how that sonar can know how to measure the outside world. This is how FI can understand there are things. So I know how strange that might sound for some, but FI sees a color, but it doesn't necessarily register for the first moment that is orange. The FI first feels the orange and then conceptualizes, oh, it feels like orange, it's orange. Then FI sees a cup, but it doesn't yet first register at the first moments that this is a cup. It first feels the being of the cup, if that makes sense. It first feels the cup. It feels the feeling of the colors of the cup, of the little textures on it, of the everything that makes it, the texture, the weight of it, or everything of my hand touching it. Is like so many feelings associated with it, and all those feelings is like that sonar waves that come back in me, and they tell me things about this. I first feel a texture, not physically, but with my soul. I feel the feeling of a certain texture. I feel the feeling of a certain color, and then the rationale happens. Oh, this is brown. Oh, this is white, and this is the texture like this, and this cup has this weight, and that. But first, and all of first, it's only a feeling. I feel the things around me, and this is how I know they exist. And then my mind takes those feelings and transforms them into concepts. Oh, that's orange, that's a tree, that's a human, that's your mother, that's your, because it feels like my mother, you know. It feels like my mother. And this is, by the way, I'm making a tangent here, any tangent, but I think it's relevant because sometimes when people change their energy, this is how it can be heartbreaking for an FI user who, even though it sees the same person and that person has changed in a way, its energy, its feeling, it doesn't feel like that person anymore. And the FI needs a bit of time to accommodate with the new energy of that person in order to recognize it. It's like, you know how you have dogs and they recognize the world around by smelling people, smelling things. And this is how everything is charted in the mind of the dog by the smell these things give off. This is how FI, in a way, we could say that it perceives the world by the energies the things emit and not by the things themselves. So when I say feelings, it's a much more simplified word for energy. So basically saying that FI sends is like a sonar that sends this wave of energy out, and it's always pulling it back in itself, and through that wave of energy is measuring somehow the energies of everybody else around, and not only people but um, trees and animals and um, minerals and the entire planet around, and not only physical things, but it does the same thing with concepts. It can put an idea out and then it can send a wave from the soul to that idea, and it can interact with the energy of that idea. Because for example, for me, everything seems like it has an energy signature. Everything seems to have an energy um, correspondent. An idea has an energy to it. A concept has an energy to it, an intuition has an energy to it, a preference has an energy to it, and desire has an, everything has energy. This is how it is seen. So if I can interact with the energies of the anything, including physical things, including mental things, including emotional things, even it can interact with another emotion through the energy that emotion holds as a charge. So it's like this sonar that is sent out, and then and by the way, the sending out and pulling in, we need to explain this, we need to explain it like this for our minds, but in actuality how it feels is like it's never sent out and it's never pulled in. It's always in a ambivalent state, in a both states simultaneously, where it's just in the field of everywhere. It's like it's 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 sent out and pulled in simultaneously, so it's never out or in. It's just there. It's just a thing that is constantly aware of the energetic or energies of everything always. So this type of wave, I could also describe it like a hand. So how it feels the most accurate for me, it feels like there is the soul here, and this soul can have tentacles. It feels like it has a hand, and it can stretch its hand and touch concepts, touch objects, touch people, touch ideas, and measure the through energy, it can measure those concepts and it can get information out of those concepts, out of those people, out of those ideas. So in a way, I could view FI as a very, very, let's say, going to the core of what makes reality be reality and interacting with reality from the energetic blueprint of reality. So in a way, it makes something like the process feels extremely holy for me. It feels like something extremely intimate and extremely pure, and like it's like you interact with the purity of the things around. So this is how I feel personally, that because there is this level of reverence and of purity, because it's like going to the depths of a certain object, the depths of a certain tree, its own being, like the core of its own being, and seeing it and touching it through yourself is like being in a communion with the what makes a tree be a tree, and feeling its inner being, and feeling, I got chills on my hand when I said that, and feeling the inner being of a certain person, that purest essence of a certain person, and that purest essence of a certain object or of a certain concept or an idea. And that's when you become like this, like I can't allow myself to make any mistakes, because you're working with the most purest substances possible. Like, for example, I interact with a being, and as I get to feel more of its core pure essence, it's like I become in love, I become in reverence. I like there is such a purity, and this is where it feels like I need to be extremely careful in how I handle my energy, because now I know what that being is in its purest form. So I need, because in a way, you know how it feels like that being is naked. It's like it has shown itself to me in this very, very pure way, and I need to make sure that it's like touching the most pure and precious and baby, which is just recently born baby. Like you would have so much care in how you talk to it, how you touch it, how you move it. It's like because it's so pure, and you want to keep it unaltered, you want to keep its purity the way it is. And this is how a lot of care, like it feels internally, a lot of care needs to be done once you have seen this purest essence of a thing, of a person, of an object, of a concept. Like there is a inner automatic sign of feeling of reverence, of respect, and of care, like care towards how I speak to that person, or care towards being sure that there are just the correct words that, oh my god, and it's so precious. Okay, okay, I'm losing my train of thought. uh, so being sure that the correct words are spoken, that it would keep that being in that purity in itself, and make sure that that purity, not only that it remains intact, but make sure that through your interaction you're like a water in a way, and you can give, is like your, that purity would be a seed, but if it's watered correctly, it can expand in more and more magnificent ways of that being. And it's like if I can unconsciously always perceive in a way the path of where that is, like seeing a certain person and seeing in its core, the core of itself, that inner seed of extreme purity, and seeing it like a substance, I could almost see it with my inner eyes. And it's so pure, and it's so full of potential, and it's so full of wanting this magnificent power within that being, which lies very, very deep within a being, and many times it's so untouched and so unused and so asleep. But you see it, and not only that you see its potential, is like in plain words we would say that we could see the true potentials of the people around, and not only the people around, but the objects around and the world around, and everything is like being able to see a world of pure potentiality everywhere. And knowing what those beings are and knowing how the world is in its truest form, and seeing it here in the outside world, in the physical world, like being this, what the heck is wrong with this world? Like, look at these people. They are in their most perfect form, but here they kill themselves and they do all this harm to themselves. Why are they injuring that thing? Why are they not showing that thing? Because that thing is like, how it's, you're going to a fireworks show and you're just looking at the fireworks, and each fireworks are poof, 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 and you're wow, it's like the most amazing and unbelievable feeling that you could imagine is looking at, like, the most unbelievable feeling one could imagine in this world, like a fireworks show or something like extreme, like wow, the amazement of it. It's like similar to how you would look inside the being and you would see that feeling multiplied millions of times, and it's so pure and it lies within that being, and you just look at that being, you look at the exterior of it, and you just don't understand why, what keeps this being from accessing that inner thing and just pouring it into the world, making a fireworks show out of its life. And you're just knowing the potentials of everything. You're just looking at the root potentials. Like, you can't not be in love with life. I can't understand how you could see those things, how you could feel them within, and you would not be in love with people, you would not be in love with things, with trees, with nature, with everything, because everything has that thing. Even a concept or an idea has that thing. So FI, not only that it sees the potential, but if it's quite, if FI is quite evolved, it can, I mean, no, that's not correct. All FI users and this thing happens in everybody, even if they are conscious of their FI or not conscious of their FI. I believe this happens in everybody. We all know, and in our unconscious side of our psyche or subconscious side of our psyche, we all have access to this. We all feel this extreme potential that lies within us and the people around. And we all know that, but we don't know it consciously. So this is my strong belief, that we don't know it consciously. So when a FI is in a dominant position, that being has a much more, the chances that being becomes aware of this is much more increased, because it's in its top most conscious function. So even with this topmost conscious functions, it can still remain, this what I've said right now, it can remain completely undiscovered throughout an entire life, because it runs so default, it runs so automatically in that being. It's so, like, seeing the purity of everything around, it runs so deep and so automatically and always, that you just don't think about it, you just don't question it in a way. So the idea is that the FI not only can perceive that purest seed, that purest potential of somebody, it can see it exactly as I said, that it's like a seed, and it can see the path of its own evolution. It can see that if it's watered in this way, it can grow in this way, and it almost sees, like, it sees that seed of potential, but it at the same time simultaneously sees its grown up tree. So it sees the unfoldment of the fullest expression of that being simultaneously with seeing it just like a seed. And it sees, like, okay, it can measure what does it need to happen to have this being move from this state of a seed to this state of a full grown tree. what are the steps, what type of water, what type of minerals, and what type of words, what type of behaviors, what type of environments, how is this being needing to be handled. So a bit of its needs are, let's say, watered, and it can grow in that direction of that tree, which FI sees it. And this is why I feel that beings who have FI as their first dominant functions, and especially I could say INFPs, is like you could see that they are one of the most devastated beings that can exist, because it's like seeing something that is extremely pure that you can't even speak about. It's so holy that you can't, it feels like only speaking about it, it feels like extremely holy. And seeing how everything is like that, everything is only that, those flames of pure potential, those stars inside, those seeds, which represent the most pure thing and the most astonished power and potential that one could imagine. And seeing everywhere those things, and not seeing those things actualized, not seeing those things manifested, and seeing this world here where everywhere everybody seems like in this nightmare, this dream, this monstrosity. And it just feels like, oh my god, seeing a person who does not live up to its own potential is like devastating. It's like just, it's just watching a horror movie that doesn't stop. It's like seeing a person who takes that potential and brutalizes that inner core most pure thing, that baby that has just been born, and it lies there in your hands and you just mutilate it. It's like you can't watch those things without being torn apart. You can't watch this world without feeling like constantly crying or just pulling up your hair. And this is from this inner pain that it becomes cosmic in a way. The pain that the FI user is constantly feeling, it cannot be described, or it cannot be described, simply put, for other functions, for other, it's like a pain which is not a mental pain that you don't think about, oh, this world is not going in the right direction. It's not a mental, it's like a bodily and soul pain which you can't escape from. It's like since you wake up in the morning till you go to sleep, it's a constant pain within your soul that you don't know where it comes from, why it's there, how to do it, because it feels like it incapacitates one to actually properly walk and talk in the world. Because imagine that you would need to act normal in the world but always having your leg cut off or bleeding, or it's like it's so distracting because it hurts so much, and you need to be at a table with people and act politely and smile, but your leg is like freaking hurting so much because it's bleeding right now. And of course it will take so much of your attention, and you can't be present in that moment with those people because there is so much pain within your body, let's say. And I know that for many people, when they hear about pain of the soul, they can't imagine what that might mean, and they might feel like, yeah, it's just ah they feel pain in their soul, like, we have real problems here, and there are people there that feel pain in their soul. And but man, like, this pain is really, like, it's completely real, visceral and debilitating. And so the FI user then tries to figure out, even I could bet that many FI users, especially INFPs, would have tried even since they were a child to figure out what this thing is, to figure out how to fix things, how to fix what's keeping people from expressing that purest potential within. What's up? What has been jammed in the system? What's not working? And this is how the INFPs mainly start developing this interest to understand the human psychology, to understand what's wrong with humanity, what's wrong with, why don't they express that inner thing, why humanity looks the way it looks, because it sees how humanity looks in actuality. It sees the true version of the things around. And it's always this dichotomy in seeing internally, knowing. It's not supposing, or it knows it. If I knows the real version of everything, It knows the purest potential of everything. It knows how the world needs to look in its actuality and looks in its actuality, but still not, doesn't, the world is not there yet physically. It hasn't yet reached that manifestation. So during this time where the world is moving towards that, there can be this internal friction and pain. And why is it like that? But it's not a mental pain. It's just a visceral pain of seeing the world not meeting up to its own potential yet. And especially when there is a certain being or a certain environment or a certain cause or something that feels like fighting with that potential, that feels like still not, has not, a certain being, let's say, has not entered on the path to grow into that potential and still mutilating it and still ripping it apart. And still, it's like seeing somebody kill a baby in front of you, and it's a baby that feels so like, and not, and expect oneself to not react to that, not feel pain when you see somebody smashing, for example, a baby, a newborn baby. Like, how could you not feel anything when you see that? How could there be no? How could there not exist a reaction to that? So now there is a scale. For example, some beings are already started to move on that their own inner potential, and when you look at them, even if they are not there yet, you can feel unease. You can feel, okay, they are doing it. Yeah, they are moving on the right track. It's okay. It's fine. Phew. It's like, okay, at least they are on the right track. They are moving in that direction. It's fine. Everything is fine. But if you're encountering beings that they are fighting against that inner potential, that they are mutilating it, that they are mocking it, that they are, it's like you, like, I don't know, just it just feels like insanity. You just want to go to those beings and just shake them up really hard. And what the heck are you doing with your life? Like, don't you see what you have inside of you? Don't you see like what you are here to not to accomplish in a physical sense, but what you are here to understand about yourself, to discover about yourself, to be in reverence and in service of? Don't you see what you need to actually be in service of this inner thing that exists in you? Like, look at that crystal, look at that purity, look at, like, don't you see what you're smashing? It's like that pure baby. Don't you see how the harm that you are doing to yourself? Like, and you just want to go to them and really shake them up hard. And because fi in itself, it has levels of maturity. So being, it's not necessarily that you know that a being doesn't live up to its true and pure potential within, and you just know it as an FI user. No, FI user and FI can also be dealing and knowing how to work with one's FI. It's also a process of evolution and development and discovery. So it's not like if you just know that a being is on a wrong path, you can just know, you have the maturity and the intellectual knowledge and the tools to go and talk to that being. Many times in my past, for example, when I was a child, the same process happened within me. I just knew, for example, when the family around would be like, I knew that they were not supposed to act like that to one another. I knew they were not, they were supposed to be different. I just not because it was morally bad what they were doing, but because I was seeing the real version of them. I was seeing the real version of the reality around it. I knew that we need together to match that version, because this is why we came here as souls, to match that version. So even though I didn't knew all these things that I said now consciously, I knew them viscerally within me. But as a child, I didn't have the mental preparation to deal with people and to try to see exactly what word they need, what's the right um, word or attitude or behavior that they need in order to release and to slowly push them on that path. I didn't know how to do that, and most of the time I was just extremely angry with people that I would see that in my opinion, I would just know like this is completely madness. What they are doing is like it's completely nonsensical. But I wouldn't have this knowing it within me why I was feeling like that and why what was happening actually. So I was just feeling extremely mad, and I was just bursting out in the family. No, you should not talk like that. You should talk like this, and you should do like that. And even since I was a child, like in my family, like I would always be this thing like this the individual in the family that would always have a thing for righteousness and truth. Like no, you have to say the truth. No, you need to act truth. No, do you say it like that if you don't mean it like that? Like no, and these people in the family, they seem like they were talking like they were lying and they were trying to cover things, and I would only see still like even since I was I don't know 6 or 5 or just say it as it is, say what you really feel, like see say it, it's more clear if you really mm, tell to others what you really feel, because now we can understand our needs, now we can understand each other. What's the point in lying? What's the point in hiding that? You're afraid of course I get that, but it's make it the courage to say what you're feeling, because it will help us all. Yeah, it might turn into a bad situation for some time because another person might be hurt or whatever, but let us deal with what we really are than what we fake ourselves to be, right? So even as a child, I had the same feelings, the same insights, but I couldn't had the maturity enough to know how to handle people, to know that it's not enough to burst out at people and they will change the course of their actions. So then I had to take so many steps into trying to learn how to work with this, and I'm still learning. There are still people that I would just want to feel like going up to them, just shake them really hard, and just hope that that would set them on the right path. And yeah, but it's a work in progress. It's a learning patience, learning how to how to deal with finding the right words, finding the right attitude, being more patient towards the processes of a certain individual, of a certain event, because it's mainly related to individuals. Because if I see it's like, yeah, but people are creating the reality that we are in right now. They are influencing with their actions how earth looks or how the reality looks, and they are keeping all other people in ignorance because they themselves are not fully working with themselves, or they are keeping the whole reality around and the people around them in ignorance, in fear mode, in destructive operating behaviors and all of these things. So like if I deeply sees that change has to come from within, because it sees that inner potential that exists in everything, and it knows that no one needs anything else than that. We are all scared and we are all hungry, let's say, and we are all in pain, not because there is something missing in the outside of ourselves, but because we can't reach that inner thing. And we know it is inside of us, but because there are these walls or these things that prevent us from reaching that inner thing, that inner light, let's say, that inner purity, that inner love, that inner energy, we feel deprived. We feel deprived of what we really are. And because we feel that deprived, we feel a lack, and that lack transforms into frustration, and frustration transforms into annoyance, into trying to blame the exterior reality for not meeting up your needs and all of these things. But everything comes from not being able to touch that thing that you know exists within you. So once one has managed to touch into that and has learned the path that leads to that thing, it can always go there internally, and it can always touch it, and it can always work with it. And a lot of weight is being lifted out of that being, because it understands, oh, I was never in lack, I was never hurting, I was never abandoned. Like I never felt abandoned. I only thought I was abandoned. I was never rejected. I was never left without energy. I was never in lack. I just felt like that. I just thought I was like that. But this thing was always in me. So yeah, this is how we can. There is so much more about FI, and there is so much more that I think I could speak about how FI works, and there are so many things that I have uncovered. But I think this was a general or a certain view on it that might bring more light. And by the way, this is how why when it enters into a room, FI can immediately feel the room. Not only the room, but also like the a room could be empty, and it can feel the energy of the room. It can feel what the energy of what has happened in that room, or the energy of the room itself, the signature of the room itself. It can feel when it enters into a room. It can feel the charge in the room. It can feel what it's needed to happen in order to discharge it. Um, but here it lies the actual maturity of that user of FI, because even if FI always feels like this, it building up the tools, the mental capacities, the strength to be able to go there and change the environment in that room, and not only witness it, not only just know, oh, okay, it's so much madness here, or it's so much beauty here. Not only know it, but go and interact with it. That's when if I really can spend a lot of time just needing to make sure that it builds up the confidence. Okay, I can, these are the correct words, this is the correct behavior that needs to be applied to this situation in order to be sure that we are shifting it towards that true pure thing that this situation already is at its core. So because for an FI user, it can feel extremely painful to to see that you go and you worsen a situation by your words or by your behavior, to see that you haven't pondered enough on the words necessary, on the attitude necessary, and because you haven't pondered enough, you go there and that being becomes even more destructive. That's quite hard to take for an FI user, because you're seeing again how that being takes that baby and mutilates it even more after interacting with you, and it's no, why have I caused that to that baby? It feels like I have caused more pain to that baby because I didn't knew how to measure my words and my behavior. Or so so in a way, I remember that many times of my life I felt this sensation that I wanted to say to people, how people want you do something good to them, or you have friends that appreciate you, and I remember one case in which there was this girl friend, and there was Christmas time, and she wanted to make me a gift, and the people ask you like, what do you want, like what would make you like, what would be your gift, what would you like, in life and in general, let me know you as a friend. And I even think I said it in two times to two different beings. It's like the best thing that you could ever offer to me is to be yourself. It's like, and I really like if people would know what this actually means. Like truly feel this is almost like the statement of my life here on earth. It's like the best thing that I could ever be offered by another being is to see that being itself, meeting its full potential. It's like nothing else that could make me feel more completed than seeing another being itself and living to its fullest development of itself. When and if that happens, and I've encountered here and there beings who are approaching levels of true and truer versions of themselves, it's like watching the most beautiful, unimaginable fireworks show, and most pure and divine, like the most happy baby. You would see a baby which is like, or a small kitten, or a small, it's like being so happy and playful, and it's like, let me just stay like that all my life and just look at these kitties, or just look at this pure baby just giggling and learning stuff, and it's just seeing the purity of life being expressed, and seeing life itself expressing itself in its purity, it's like, how could you ever want more than that? It's like, it's not only a mental thing, it's a visceral feeling. It's like how you look at some kitties or some puppies or some babies, you know? It's a visceral thing. It's not a mental, oh, I like it because it's a baby. It's, you feel that's, oh my God, how, or a small plant, or just the purity of incipient life, you know? Life at the beginning of its expressions is so pure. So yeah, I think this is why I feel sure that this is how ISFPs, what happens for ISFPs as well. But I think for INFPs, this thing where we feel so in touch with FI because there is no other distraction. There is no distraction from the outside world, from the physical world, you know. We live in a world of our own ideas, and we are so in touch with the purity of everything around. And because there is only our these ideas, these abstract things that act like our, let's say, interaction with the outside world, it's only done through abstractions. It's nothing concrete that could pull my attention really here in the abstract, in the physical world. There is much more focus and much more underpinning and awareness of FI. It's like you're living in this world of FI. And by the way, what I said about the other people, it's always also true about myself. It's in myself, there is the same purity, there is the same quality. And when I don't live up to that, when I say a faulty word, when I act in a certain way that does not stand true for that inner purity, it feels like I'm mutilating that baby. It feels like I'm mutilating that thing, and I can feel how life itself is being mutilated, and how something extremely pure is being mutilated, and I start to feel bad with myself. And it's like this is how this is where authenticity comes from in FI. It's like not because we want to be right, not righteous. I mean, not because authentic is something. Oh, it's good to be authentic because resolves a lot of problems, or that comes after. That's a mental understanding, but the actual core of it is just you see the truth of everything. You see the world around you in its most pure and truthful form. And once you see the most beautiful beauty, once you see the perfection of life, you can't want anything else than that. It's like once you have had the most perfect cake, you can't eat less. So even if you eat something that is feels less than that, you will always think about that purest taste. And imagine that now you live your life having the access to this purest version of reality at all times, and you can't make yourself being able to accept how reality is right now, because you know what reality is in its purest, in its truest form, and you can only devote your life towards possibly bringing it a step closer to that truth. And by the way, FI not only sees the purest and truest version of a certain being, but it sees the truest version of the reality around, of Earth, of the universe, of the cosmos, of the human being as an integral consciousness. And this is where basically the true this is where FI starts to blend with an I think, because from some level onward, being able to see this purity, having access to it, FI can start to look into the purity, talk to the purity, and ask it questions like, what are you? How is this universe came to be? We as humans? What is the cosmos? And by interacting with the purity itself, now it starts to understand how the cosmos works and how the human body works, and anything can be revealed. And this is why I think the introverted functions is like all of them stem from a single source of truth. All introverted functions, because they can go so deep within, they access the fountain of life itself, the fountain of truth, which has been deemed as the collective unconscious, but I feel it's even more than that. So I think all 4 introverted functions can access the collective unconscious, that fountain of all truth, but it does it through different ways. So, and I can do it through these visions or insights, or just this perfect vision of the cosmos and this perfect vision of our nature and how reality works. FI does it through the heart mainly. It feels the heart of the universe. It feels the heart of the cosmos, the heart of people, the heart of what makes things be what they are. TI might make it through this seeing the perfect blueprint of creation itself, and being having access internally to this perfect, it's like silver pristine blueprint, all the rules, everything, but laid out in their perfect forms, like having this perfect puzzle so well put together, and seeing that and having access to that purest form of arrangements of the cosmos, and not seeing those things implemented like that in their perfection in this physical reality can be, I think it's hard for a TI user to witness that perfection of the laws and the blueprint of creation, and not see that perfection, and not see people, and not see this world conducting themselves according to that perfect blueprint. I could get that about TI. And then SI, which feels for me like, wow, SI feels like this wise old man, this thing that only sits, is like this Zen, this is like the Tao itself, is like the Zen that doesn't want to speak and say anything, just sees. SI is like it just sees it all. But it sees it all in the way of like having pure awareness of what the cosmos is as a whole, with everything together, physical and non-physical, everything becoming this united integral thing. And Desai just is like this wise old man that after living eons of time has nothing else to say, just rests in silence and looks at you. And when you look at it, you understand the truth. It's like SI can put you in that place of truly being the cosmos. You know, it's like it can give you the experience of the cosmos because it becomes so transcendental that you just are in the presence of a certain being like that, and you just become illuminated, let's say, like this still floating Zen master. This is how I imagine a site. So all these 4 functions, the introverted functions, seem to me to be tackling this core. If they go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, they reach this one single truth that for me it appears clear that all reality is built upon this one single fountain of life. So this is why the introverted functions can go in depth, and they usually have a lot of depth when they start to speak and they start to manifest in the world. They know the blueprint of creation, they know the highest potential of things, they know the truest nature of things, and they know the intricacies of what makes things be relating to each other in the way they relate. So they have a lot of they can have a lot of insight, but knowing how to work with that insight requires mastery, and it requires time and learning and discovery. Yeah, so I think this was a long video, but I think I feel to conclude here with FI. A lot more can be said about FI and about the other functions. But yeah, I will conclude it here now.